Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Growing Pains. It feels really good to say that after this long hiatus, and I'm really happy to be back doing Growing Pains. I hope that you enjoyed the episode that we've got coming up. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with Void Interactive's Sean Gorman and Mark Ranson about the game Ready or Not. We're going to be discussing quite a lot about the unique setup that Void has in terms of their global operations, how it all came about from this indie project that sort of blew up, and what their design and art ethos is in building the game and how they look at building it with the global studio. They also share some exciting updates about the game's progress and especially about the new DLC that's just come out. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this conversation. I do have one other big announcement about Growing Pains. We're actually going independent of GDL soon. I've been fortunate enough that I've been supported by Any Brain on this podcast, so they'll be supporting the show going forward, and I'm looking forward to having a lot more industry leaders to speak about what's been happening around the game space as well. But yeah, for the time being, I think the next 3 or so episodes I should still have out on GDL, but after that, please do migrate over to the Growing Pains channel and look there for all future content around this podcast. Thanks for being here, and now on to the episode.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for joining me, Mark and Sean. Do you want to just give a quick intro to yourselves first before we dive into the deep end of things?
Mark, you want to go first?
Yeah, certainly. Well, hello, it's fantastic to be here. My name's Mark Ranson. I am the art director at Void Interactive. I've been with the company now for about going on 6 years, I believe. And during that time period, we've seen our company grow from really was just a very, very small dedicated people working on it almost in a hobby capacity. And then since then, we've obviously grown the project, we've grown the team into the game that we all know now.
And then myself as well. So my name is Sean, so thank you for having us. So Sean Gorman, I've been here at Void for just coming up on about 3 years. I'm the lead designer here at Void, so working on Ready or Not, and that's what we're excited here to speak to you about.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited to learn more about the game. I know we had a brief conversation with Chris and then also Sterling over a year ago, so I think things have probably changed since then. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that I found really interesting about Void when I first heard about it, and maybe you guys can sort of just shine a light on this, is that you guys operate kind of as a global studio. At least when I spoke to Sterling, he said it sort of accidentally materialized from this hobby with other friends and then became this expansive thing with Ready or Not that became almost like this global institution that you guys have today. So what was that like seeing this company grow? And obviously you guys have joined at separate stages of the journey. What did it feel like coming into the studio and like working across the globe in that way?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's been genuinely very humbling that we've had such a huge success with Ready or Not. Not only just the fans who play the game and support us, but the people who we've been working with over these years as well. We've got an amazing team of just really highly skilled and highly dedicated, and I think that's like really a key word that whenever we talk about working remotely, it's incredibly important because there are a lot of challenges genuinely with working fully remotely. I mean, I think we must have people in every single continent, certainly a lot of different countries, like all over the world. And it's been an interesting challenge because there's so many nuances that you have to do when working entirely remotely as well. So it's not all just about time zones, which is also like a big factor that we do have to take into consideration of when we're having meetings and how we even have that communication, but really how we actually go about communicating with our team as well. It's something that we've been growing ourselves, and it was one of those things that at the very, very beginning we highlighted this as being, I wouldn't necessarily say a problem per se, because everything's a challenge making games. But this was one of those challenges that was quite forefront to us. And it's one of those things that we've worked really, really, really hard on as a studio to kind of like embrace that culture of like communication really being important with us. And we're even still today learning how to do this more effectively wherever we can. Every now and then we have our hiccups, but just like any game dev, it adds that extra layer, I think, of complexity to making what is already a complex product as well.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. I've traveled around both from conference side and everything else, where when I'm engaging with people from some parts of the world, a lot of people have different ideas in terms of how games come about. How has that shaped Ready or Not's development, where you have this kind of global culture communicating across different people, whether it's from ideation, on the art style, on the design? Like, how does the studio's global perspective help shape the game in that way?
I'd say you've got a mix. In the case of let's talk first on the project. It's set in a sort of fictional Los Angeles. So you have Los Suenos. And so you have folks in the team who are American and you have others who are outside of the States. So that gives you a quite interesting mixture. You've got people whose perspectives are shaped by the culture there in the States and those elsewhere. And we have to make sure that we keep that not just in check, but that's informative of sometimes stories we want to tell, that these levels or missions we want to go to, so on. But it is inside and set inside of as we say, a fictional Los Angeles city. Yeah. So then we have to be very aware of that context. But like I said, the stories we go to, the places we end up moving to, we don't want to really hold back as well. So we end up going to various types of locations. And because it's fictional, we can inject those into that place. If it was, give you a certain example here then, Mark, of a couple of places that don't exist in Los Suenos and Los Angeles, but that we have created. I guess we can think of a few even here.
The immediate one that sticks out to me is potentially the farm map, the Cherry Vine, where yes, there are kind of like farms and sort of more rural areas around Los Angeles, but with us then being able to carve our version of this, we can maybe have more of them and sort of like different stylings and different architecture types, and we can bring a little bit of that almost I don't want to call it like a European influence, because every now and then, especially because like a lot of the art team is more on the European side, every now and then a little bit too much of the European way of like how sockets would go on walls, or like how architecture would be, sometimes creeps in, and then we have to go back and be like, look at some reference, make sure it aligns and it feels very American as well. But every now and then we deliberately let some of that stuff trickle in, because it creates an interesting world that is not necessarily tied exactly to the reality of what Los Angeles is, but it allows us to do a lot more creative freedom and really have a little bit of extra kind of spice on top of it as well.
Yeah, so you kind of just get to build your own world, your own universe, as it were, where it's still reflective of the real world spaces, but then, like you said, mixing the European elements and things like that, it still has that unique feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, it allows us to turn it up like to 11 or 12 instead of constraining ourselves to what would be reality. But at the end of the day, a lot of what Ready or Not is, it's to feel grounded. We want to have that realistic tactical SWAT first-person shooter. That is our forefront of our design, and it's what's really, really important. But we can certainly sprinkle a little bit of extra stuff around that to kind of, if anything, enhance those experiences as well.
Yeah. So, talk to me a bit more about that sort of groundedness of this game, because, SWAT style games were really big kind of 2000s, and then it sort of died out, and then Ready or Not sort of brought this genre back to the forefront in a way. What was the inspiration? Like, where did it start, both from art or design side, where you decided, okay, we want to make this like a really gritty kind of grounded game that, like you said, is still set in a fictional world, but has that realism and sort of real choices for these players? What informed both sort of the art design and, the game design loops there as well?
I'd say it's informed by the genre. Like that genre, we mean tactical shooter. And for the most part, better part of the last decade, that genre has been informed by quite a small number of games that occupy that space. You've got, pouring among them, your military simulators, your armors, your squads on one side. And then really on the other, where it starts to lean into the more arcadey aspect, you've got now what is Rainbow Six Siege, which has changed over the years. But right between those two posts, those two poles, is the space we occupy. And quite singularly, I don't think there are many other IPs that do it to the standard that we hold. So that is that tactical shooter. And we have then that wrapper of our SWAT equivalent, your SWAT AI and so on. But, we have to be aware of our neighbors. And so we don't want to tread too deep into one territory or another. It doesn't go into kind of more military simulators. You're not looking at vehicles, combat with vehicles, or otherwise RPGs and so on. No. That's where you start to leave and go a bit too far. And then on the opposite side, where it starts to get something maybe a little bit more arcadey, like even your other members of the shooter genre. That's not what we occupy too. So it's informed by the genre. Some of that decision making means pacing. It can also inform the size of the levels too, the interactions that you'll have. But they're again matched by the context. So you play as the SWAT team, the SWAT officers. You are a SWAT commander. So that would, I'd say, be underline the nature and the game loop as well. We don't, for example, you don't play as any of these bad guys that you're going up against. You know, you're not playing as what would be active shooters. That is a no-no. That's not our bag. That's not the game we're making.
Yeah.
You're playing as the SWAT team. So the equipment you bring with you, the play style, the incentives that the players should have in order to act and behave in such a way. And then others are disincentivized. If you were to walk into a space and start shooting civilians, would be heavily disincentivized for that. In fact, you'll see a consequence, be it your own team in single player, especially, will shoot you. Like you're going crazy. Hey, you're going AWOL. Yeah. Stop that. Yeah.
To build on that slightly as well, because I mean, exactly everything Sean said. Just a little bit of like kind of the origin as well, like because we were talking about sort of where the tactical SWAT genre is kind of because basically what happened was the CEOs, Sterling and the kind of higher ups who sort of like put this into fruition, they all grew up playing SWAT 4 and Rainbow Six Vegas and those amazing, basically what we are, but like way before we were even an idea at that point. And they just kind of realized that no one's really making these games anymore, and they were the games that they themselves wanted to play. So really, what Ready or Not, it's a real passion project of just wanting to make the games that we ourselves were super passionate about and no one was making, and we just wanted to fill that space ourselves with that.
I think there was even like a personal example. I won't reach to it specifically, but some member of the team originally had an actual connection to something like a SWAT team in their local area, and they'd seen that impact as well as playing those games themselves too. So yeah, it's referred to as like that white space. There's a space here we don't think was occupied that we have now occupied, and we want to serve that space right, and that player base right too. And that is that tactical shooters genre. That is you guys as players playing as that SWAT team. So that's it.
Oh, that's really cool. It's really cool. Like you found your niche, and like you said, it was like inspired as a passion project, and like everyone on the team sort of went around this and then created this world together. I guess just going sort of deeper into the game, you mentioned, initially it started off as this passion project, and I know from speaking to Sterling Chris as well that it sort of evolved almost naturally out of hand. How has the, I guess, design art changed over time as you've seen this grow? Like what was the initial idea for it, and then how did it kind of mature over time, especially as it was quite a young game team initially, right? And then it just naturally banded together and grew. So like what's been the evolution both on the art and design side?
Oh, definitely. And I think you're making an excellent point of saying evolution. I think that's a real good word to describe what we did, because it's crazy thinking back just how much that not only have we learned as a team, but then how we've then put that into the project itself. And a lot of that really was just the growth of understanding kind of like who we are as the passionate developers, where we sit, going back to the communication beforehand of working in a team around the world. And more importantly, like when that team grows as well, that in itself becomes a bit more of a learning skill that we need to work with larger teams together. Because a lot of, like you said, comes from a passion project. A lot of these people, where we were just super passionate about working in a small team. So we had to learn in a bigger environment. And as the scope of the game grew as well, I would say really the evolution, at the end of the day, it was always meant to be what we set out to be, which was that realistic SWAT tactical shooter. So at least we had a good bedrock. And from there, it was really just working out what worked, what didn't work, what could we change. what could we evolve it into? Because we never stopped. We never just went, here's 30, 40 things that we need to make, and we're done when we make those. It was very much like an iterative process of, okay, we've done 5. We find these things worked and these ones didn't work. Maybe we'll get rid of these. Maybe we'll keep some of these. Oh, and then naturally, because again, passion project and everyone's dedicated and everyone's like super enthusiastic, there's always that, oh, but can we just do that? Oh, no, can we just do that? And can we just do that?
Yeah.
And I would say, especially back in the earlier days, that was like one of our biggest problems that we had, is that we had too much enthusiasm and too much ideas and too much like, oh, we can just do that. And nothing was tracked and nothing was like documented or anything like that. And it was all just thrown in. And definitely when there was almost like a transition period that we went to after going green light, where we were like, all right, we realized its potential. Now it's serious. Let's like lock in. Let's actually treat this like a proper studio, unlike what we were, which was like a passion project at the time. All right, we need to put our heads on about this and like, get some processes involved with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely involved. I think the quality certainly has evolved to the point where, as the art director, I look back at some of our earlier maps and I'm like, wish I could have made them a little bit better. And we even actually did that. We got to the point where we even removed content because, quite frankly, we were just not happy with it anymore. We evolved as a team and the project evolved so much that those older maps just were not good enough anymore. They were not to the level that we felt the rest of the game was, so we just removed it. And obviously we're looking to replace those with new and exciting content, just like the DLC.
Yeah. Like in the removal of content, to be specific, we're talking about, you think then back into like pre-release, so or even early 23, earlier than, you're talking like missions. What was it? Like it was a hotel or something like that, wasn't it?
There was a hotel.
There
and
was
then
a
that
different
port level.
Yeah, that's right. Port was
Farm.
like Port Hokan, and it was entirely different. Farm was, oh my god, Chariot of, wow. So that's what we mean. And then those eventually came out in the PC release as a wholly imagined, like reimagined area, a whole new level that we think was just a step up. So exactly that. I'd say you go to your question, how the design has changed over time. Our process is also to add to that, because Mark's entirely right. It was very cowboy when we had, this team of what was probably like single digits years ago. And then that team just grows and grows over time. And so that more cavalier attitude cannot sustain itself. The expectations as well from the player base of the product grow as they should. And so if Mark's describing especially like kind of pre-23, and then once you get into PC release 23, 24, now 25 and 26, my goodness, you have a drastically different team. The expertise in the team is fantastic. You also have a different perspective in terms of where some of these levels have been like briefed early on. So talking, say for example, like 23, you might have had me, Mark, the creative director, talking about what kind of missions do we want to go into next. And the perspective might have been quite self-contained there, and perhaps maybe a little bit too restrictive. What do we want maybe from just an art perspective? And now there is a design team. What do we want now from a design perspective? And as that grows over the course of 24 and 25, now you have much more influence of teams that have since grown. Again, that's your narrative teams, your engineering teams. So it's not just then on content development. Now we have been able to think on, well, what additional features do we want to introduce and how can we make these levels better? So our level design team have become stronger. The levels themselves, we hope that with each subsequent DLC that we've released, they've actually been getting marketably better because we have a formula. We know the formula. We have the system. It's no longer like 23 or earlier where you're working on the track, laying it in front of the train while building the train and keep on moving forward. We have that system. We have a game already. We're just trying to develop content for. And now we've reached a point. It's good old-fashioned feature development. How also can we add to this, give players more tools, more fun ways to interact with the game, as well as new content to engage with? So it's a really exciting time to be a Ready or Not player. Nice. And that's certainly how we've evolved over time, I'd say. Content development, now again back into sort of more content and feature development.
No, that's really cool. No, I love hearing like the journey of the growth of the studio. A lot of my listeners actually, they're usually indie and sort of double A sort of growing. So a lot of times I've had a lot of people come up with the issues of exactly what you said earlier, Mark. It was like kind of all over the place. There wasn't really any processes. And then suddenly it's like, oh no, we went on to early access in Steam and it kind of blew up or something happened. And now it's like serious, going from that to the ownership of the players. I think games are this weird product where it's not just your own, right? You build it for yourself to a degree, but then when you give it out to the world, it becomes partially the world's, and then everyone's a critic. So it's like voices from all over in looking to develop. So it's really interesting to see how you, I guess, started from that very indie route and have now kind of scaled into this bigger team with so many different functions. I guess could you just touch upon how that's evolved in terms of how you work across the different teams? So obviously before you said it was more streamlined where you had smaller teams and like Sean, you, Mark, back in 23 would be able to work, I guess, more frequently together. But then now as the teams have grown and you have more people to manage and things, like what does that look like when you're looking at a feature set?
Even that, like even just to recollect, when there was a small number of us, like where there was, and this maybe speaks to your audience, when you don't have a large team, when you can work like basically by a measure of a single room, 4 or 5, maybe up to about 20 people. The difference of 5 to 10 is also quite a jump. And the difference of 10 to 20 is quite a jump. And that's okay. You can work pretty fast in that way. When it jumps from 20 to 40 or 40 to 80, those are huge jumps. And recognizing that is important. So to get to your question, but I'll just first say, back then, even when there was a small number of us, the speed was also necessary because you might not have, in the case of maybe a small company or a small game, you might not have money coming in. If it's not out there in the world, people could purchase it. You might need to get there quickly. So you need that agility where processes might in fact obstruct that agility. But then also, once you reach that point and you start getting that product out into the world, as we described, like again, 2023 or even early access, now there's an expectation. Now we actually have to start being, as Mark says, serious. And that requires a shift. So even when I'm referring to that, and that might sound as if like we got the chance to work together and all was well and good. Oh my goodness, no, it was super cavalier. It was because it was fast. Let's get a decision. What sounds about right? But the turnover there is pretty quick. Had to be quick, but it's some part reactionary as well, because you might have play tests or just something didn't work in piece of review or feedback, and the whole level might have to change. So port, my goodness. Mark, 20, how many must we've gone through iterations of port?
Oh, I dread to even think at this point, honestly. But and again, I'm glad that we did, because like through all that kind of like hard work and redoing it, like if we just rested on our laurels and went, it's fine, it's good enough, like I think that would probably have been one of the worst levels that we would have. And now it's honestly probably one of the best levels that we have, exactly because we put that time and effort and hard work, and we never gave up on it. I think is probably a good way of phrasing it.
But to your audience who's listening, if they are coming from a much smaller team, that's great, especially as it can have focus. You can, as I say, you can be agile. You can speak to everybody inside of your team of what could be 5 or even up to sometimes 15 people, and information can be conveyed rather quickly. That's great. There is a challenge that we're describing, which is your question is then how do you manage the difference then of a small team to a medium and then a large? The small to medium does mean a process is necessary. And even if it is a semblance of a process, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do need to get some buy-in from people in this. Hey, process doesn't mean like we're now all becoming, everything has to be business-like and super corporate was the word thrown around. Modders who were part of our team were so scared by this work. They're like, why we're wresting control away from us? Like, we don't want that. Oh! Yeah. No. It should be that we can still work at the quality we want, but we have to be aware no longer 20 people. We're 40 people. And like we said to your earlier question, you have people all over the world. So that added an extra level of complexity. Again, kind of even a multiplicative complexity, not in addition to. Because Mark and I might wake up. We're based here, if you can't tell from our accent. We wake up in London, England, but that's been already a day for those who are in Australia, New Zealand. It's at the end of their day even. And so we might wake up and go, and there's some fire or there's some other conversation happened already and has taken place that we have to catch up on. you're kind of always following that trail. My point is, establish a process and start to get buy-in from people who should be part of that process. Something like I would recommend sprint planning or a pod structure. You have this also referred to in other studios like strike teams or otherwise. It might not be based on departments, because that just becomes silos. My team is a silo. Mark's team is a silo if we don't interact. So you do need to establish points of contact, who are then, of those points of contact, stakeholders of certain features or levels. So in the case of Ready or Not, we had a design stakeholder for a level, there was an art stakeholder for a level, and they needed to overlap regularly. So where there was a level designer, they needed to pass information, and pass, I do mean specifically there was a meeting you would call a kickoff meeting or a handover, where we provide that to the relevant neighboring team. That would need to be done with all different departments. And that's usually in one big call. So there's an opportunity for questions, an opportunity for that vision to be communicated and scrutinized. So that's necessary. Otherwise, it's just chaos. And fun things can come from chaos, but also lots of waste can come from chaos. So when you get to a certain size, from small to medium, that's entirely necessary. And if you've not done it by medium to large, oh my God, you might be doomed. So do think about doing that quickly would be my advice.
Yeah, just to kind of echo that as well. Again, but Sean, bang on the money with everything he said, and I agree with the waste. In terms of like there was a lot of cleanup that we had to do, sort of like towards the tail end of when we were going green light, and that was when we're okay, let's go serious. And we didn't even necessarily realize at the time just how much of the waste there was of, just stuff that needed to be redone or stuff that wasn't even tracked. And it was like, okay, but how do we put this in and stuff like that? So just to kind of add on to what Sean was saying, I would say for any kind of like small mid-range team, whatever like that, any basic resemblance of tracking is always a good thing. When you're setting off to do like a map or a prop or whatever the case would be, write it down somewhere and be like, this is how long it's going to take, and try and stick to it, because then it keeps it accountable. It lets other departments know when to jump on and do their thing. And then because especially we're working around the world, it's a super small thing, but just what my team does, and I know Sean's team does the same, and all the other teams do as well, is basically just when you start your day being like, hey, I'm here today, I'm doing this. And it's a simple little message, but it's surprising how much that one little message, it opens up communication, because someone will see it and be like, oh yeah, don't do that, I'm doing this, or oh cool, are you doing that, I'll wait, or whatever the case would be. And because we work all in different time zones and stuff like that, we don't necessarily always know when people are going to be around. So little things like that, it makes life easier.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm honestly surprised by how many times I've spoken to like both indies, but then also like studios that have gone through that transition, where the like to your point of having different stakeholders in different departments that have sort of the opportunity and are incentivized to have the discussion between making sure that they're kind of on the same page. There's so many teams I see that are siloed, and especially bigger companies. I've had this issue myself when I was working with certain partners, where it's like you don't understand what art's doing or design's doing or production's doing, and it's like everyone has like the leads have this one meeting every month, and that's where they discuss things, and then they're like, oh, we don't want to bring anything up because then it's going to slow everything else down. So it's like all these different departments kind of almost fighting each other for space and time and resource in a way. And for me, it's just always felt very inefficient to like see you guys how you structured it, especially working across time zones and globally, and like having, I guess, the business head in a little bit of a way on, but still like keeping that culture intact of like, kind of being that game community and having that feel for the passion of it is really cool to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
And definitely
and we definitely haven't perfected that either, by the way. Like we're like we've said before, we are still very much learning and keen to do so too.
Yeah, there's many different ways we have to, whether that's asynchronously, asynchronous work meeting. You can have, maybe not everybody can attend what is a 3 a.m., GMT 0 meeting. I can't, I don't want to, no thanks. If it's irregular, okay. But I'd much prefer where I can jump into that meeting in a time that I would normally work. And I'm sure everybody else would say the same. But there has to be some measure of balance when you've got so many different people all over around the world. Maybe we can't all make the same meeting, not every week. Maybe we can split some of that up. So if we did, like we have, director reviews, or we have certain play tests, they're recorded, or we can share feedback, not just in a meeting like we are now, me and you talking. I can record that. I can share that thought so that when that person comes back to that recording, they can listen to it and share in their time at their time zone at their next convenience. There's a lot of trust in this, though. It does mean that you do need a team that there's an agreement. You do have a follow-up. But okay, if I send this information to you, please do get back to us quickly. This isn't something we're waiting on for a week. Yeah, as Mark said, we're not perfect. Show us who is, but we get better every day.
No, I think that's a great mindset to have, especially when you're building a studio, building a company, game, everything essentially. I guess just pivoting a little bit more on going to the other side of the spectrum, looking outside, especially like the player perspective. Did that pressure sort of ever start to build? I know you said once it was released, you had to iterate really fast on some of these maps and ideas and like get the processes sorted. I'm guessing part of that was because the expectations grew, but like, what was that like for you guys, and how's that changed over time in terms of informing what the players say, how that gets incorporated in the game, and how that sort of informed your process of developing the game over time as well?
It's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question. I think, again, I know that we're all incredibly humbled with the success that Radio Not had, and especially from the love that the fans themselves have for the games. Like, I genuinely feel like we created a game that slotted into that white space, like Sean was describing, that really it spoke to a lot of people. Like, it was what they were wanting for a long time. And then with that, obviously, it becomes, like we mentioned before, the expectation of quality, and then also, at the end of the day, like, people can never have too much of a good thing. I want more maps, I want more this, and I want more that. And we've always been incredibly receptive to hearing feedback. Even to this day, we're very active within sort of like Discord channels, and we do a lot of like community interactions through the marketing department. And we're open ears, and we love to hear feedback. And some of the best feedback that we've had is genuinely stuff that we've even missed, and people have pointed it out, and we've actively then gone and corrected it, or we've been hearing people's wishes, and we go, all right, maybe there's a little bit of something there we can play with and implement it as well, or whatever the case would be. But there was definitely, at least for me personally, I think I felt the pressure quite heavily, but I would say, like, at the end of the day, like, I want to give our fans who got us so far and all that kind of stuff, I want to give them everything. There's just maybe not necessarily enough time in the day to give them everything all of the time, and it's a balance. We have to figure out what is going to be best for what we want to do as well, because at the end of the day, we also want to make the games that we want to make. It's not all sort of like outside dictated inwards, but we know our product, we want to make a good game, but we also want it to sing highly to those who are playing it and so dedicated towards it as well.
I'd say too, it's trying one's best not to just think as the player base as one entity, as it's just gamers of all types are just one type, that they are of all types. This is always in the back of my mind, especially. We have data as well to back this up, but generally you could put it as you have so many different parts of the community that are looking for different things. Their values are ordered differently. And so we might look to establish a rather balance. And, for certain updates, there might be, okay, there's this community that hasn't been fed for a while. Let's give them something a little bit more here with this update, or otherwise with this level and so on. But those pressures are different areas. So pressures from, what could be your multiplayer sort of side of our community, those who play games with their friends and with randoms, or people who just look for a single player band. Any different types here. There are different expectations, but generally what I'm saying is we look to where we can feed everyone with at least something. Like I said, data tend to see that there's quite a large number of our player base that play the game single player. So commander mode is their way of playing the game. But if we only derive decision-making for just that community, then we would exclude a large over part of that community too, which we do not want to do. Some people who don't, and I'm sure, and now I'm being a little bit more abstract, some people who don't care about the story of certain missions, they might not really care at all. Some people, that is entirely why they play the game. So as we come up with new content, new features, are thinking about the entirety of the community and its different types, so that everybody, we hope, can at least come away with something. It might not mean everybody is happy. That's, I think, what Mark is saying. Sometimes, yeah, it's exactly that we just want to make the game we want to make too. That's another part of it. But yeah, there's certainly more areas we want to cater to compared to areas we do not want to cater to in this community. So it's informed by our own judgment, we should say. So we hope that over time players have built a level of trust in us in terms of what we make and what decisions we have made about content and features. And that's where they hopefully come back again.
It's a good way of phrasing it, Sean. Yeah, good way of phrasing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely, I think, the creator's dilemma when it comes to games a lot of time is like, how much of the community input can you put, right? Like, you're still building a product you love, you want to shape it yourself as well. Obviously, you've got to take some in from the outside as well. Was there ever anything, I guess, design or artistically that like really surprised you or like really changed something in terms of how you decided to push the game forward or change based on something you heard from the community that was just like, you're like, oh, we never thought of this. And that really surprised it. Was it pretty much, okay, like it's kind of what you've already imagined or you've already thought through a lot of these processes and where you take it?
I'd have one. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was more as we were releasing maps, what I would try and do as we were still trying to kind of find a good line of like how dark and how weird do we want to take some of our stories. And especially like where I am from the art side, like I really wanted to create an unsettling and unusual atmosphere, something that wasn't, like we mentioned before, yes, it's grounded in reality, but I kind of wanted to kind of test those boundaries a little bit, where you start introducing weird bits into it to make people feel like, whoa, what's going on here? This isn't quite what I was expecting. And for me, a big influence that sort of like, if anything, was an encouragement to me, where I was like, oh, this is working, people are liking it, was exactly that. We started releasing these maps, they had positive reception, people were talking about it, and I started to realize that they were getting the emotional impact that I was trying to communicate as well. Like I was giving them the experience, and like, oh man, like, have you seen the valley, the basement in the valley map yet? Whoa, Jesus, and it's and many of those, like the cherry is a farm level, it's weird and wonderful. And again, I try and add more of that as we went along, and we found that had such a positive reception. It encouraged me to push those boundaries a little bit further every time, try some different new things. And without that, I feel like I might have maybe played it a little bit, I don't want to say safer, that's not quite the right word to say safe about that, but I wouldn't have maybe, I would have thought about the broader picture rather than experimenting in that sense.
Yeah. Cool.
Myself as well, I think it'd be a little bit more towards, if I think on our 2023 release, I remember players coming, and then again for like playtesting on console, was, I don't know why I was at all surprised, if I'm not going to be honest. We had some players who were playing it like Valorant. Think about it that way. Like they would jump into the experience, which again, it's a tactical shooter, and I was surprised to their level of surprise that is not the game we're making. That there has not been that type of game for so long, that it's just been flooded instead with, it's your Valorant, it's the run and gun, quick twitch shooters. That's actually people's only way of playing. And now this type of game really does not conform to that at all. And there's an expectation from those types of players. This game is broken, it's busted, it's wrong. I'm like, no, your approach needs to change. This twitch shooter, kind of tweaking every time or flipping 180 degrees to try to do a headshot. And where's my sprint button? That's not the game. That your expectation is maybe not aligned with the genre that this lives in. And that's okay. And you see that when, I remember 23, console, so this PC release, we stayed up, me and my colleague, all night, and we would jump into the lobbies with randoms, and we would ask them. We wouldn't tell them who we are. We would ask them, like, hey, have you played the game before? And they'd be like, no, yes or no. Or we'd be watching streams of famous streamers, and they would be playing the game, and you would see such a difference. Some people would, I don't understand it. I keep dying. I go through the doorway, and then you watch them as they engage with the game. They're all going in different directions. None of them are staying together. They're all marching off, thinking it's basically, again, I am godlike. I am powerful.
Yeah.
No, this is about teamwork. It's about actually, some part, taking your time and trying to gather information. And that was quite fun and actually interesting. Again, I don't know if I was surprised. I was part expecting it. I was maybe surprised to the level of difference some players were having with the experience. Again, speaks to your earlier question, and that white space we're talking about. This genre, this tactical shooter genre, hasn't seen so many IPs introducing this type of game to those players. It's so new to so many people. It causes quite a reaction. That was fun.
Yeah,
that was an enjoyable
absolutely.
experience, I should say.
No, that's really cool. That's really cool insight as well, especially how you saw the console players being so different. Because I don't remember anything else that's similar. I think that the biggest comparison that I've personally played recently was something like Apex. I guess you're in little teams, but it's still battle royale, and it's still kind of everyone for themselves in a way. So no, that's really interesting to hear. I guess, was there anything else about? So obviously, like the player base was different in console. Was there anything else that restricted you or was different when you were developing the game for console and putting it out there that wasn't the case initially in the PC, or was it pretty much just
and I'm not saying I'm saying a controller. So this can be a PlayStation and Xbox controller input. You only have a number of inputs on this, a set number. Keyboard and mouse, you have a lot more. So if you're thinking to release on console, I would stress that be something you think about early, would be my advice. Because we have quite a lot of interactions and mappings across a keyboard. That becomes very difficult if you want to then condense that onto a certain amount of inputs that a gamepad would allow. So think about gamepad first, because it is such a heavy restriction, would be my advice. But again, depends on the type of game you're making. Ours is input heavy. So it meant menus and UI menus. So equipment menus became and commands and all that became quite extensive. For our game, it is okay. It works. For other games, that might not work. It might slow down the cadence of the game or the flow. If you're thinking sort of like Squad or Armor, games I love, they would really do struggle when you think about then gamepad. Or it doesn't have to be just other milsims. Total War. Try to put that onto a gamepad. It's hard. You see that in other titles that have done it, like your Halo Wars and so on. It's just tough. So that would be the main one, I would say.
Yeah, I'm with Sean on that one as well, because obviously, he mentioned the button interactions and how there's not many of them, but then having that communication on the screen as well, like Sean said, with we have a lot of complicated commands, not only just the amount of them, but sort of like what they mean in the moment and the kind of in-game context. So we definitely had to sit with this and really think about how this works, like really polishing it and making sure that it felt intuitive and that it felt like natural, and that the player was able to do these wide range of things in almost like a very quick sense of the word as well, because we can't just stand around in the open doing nothing. Sometimes you need to give orders, you need to do this, you need to do that, and that was a challenge for us, and something that I think that we put a lot of effort into making sure that with all of this going on, that the player still felt very much in control and it wasn't overwhelming in some ways as well.
Okay. No, that's really cool. And then, were you at all restricted in terms of the platforms themselves by technical limits or anything, or was it mostly just the fact that you need to map the controls and sort of keep that freedom in the game?
I wouldn't have said that we were necessarily restricted, but at the end of the day, we didn't necessarily set out with console in mind. Going back to our origins and the roots, there wasn't that. We didn't even think that we would get it out on PC, let alone on console. So the fact that we got it to PC and then we had the honor and the pleasure of then taking it to console as well, there was definitely a lot that we had to then sort of look back on and being like, okay, if we were making a brand new game and we knew that we were going to console, we might have done things slightly different. But because we've already had the investment and we've already got it this far, how can we now go back and not necessarily like retrofit, but there was certainly some just
There's
minor.
technical debt as
Yeah,
well.
a little bit of technical debt, I think is probably the best way of putting it. A little bit of polish and really just a little bit of reauthoring here and there. Not like flat out game wide, but just some quality of life things that allowed us to then really get it looking as good as we could and running as smoothly as we could as well.
Yeah, there'll always be technical debt, no matter what. It's just in the amount. So not every business project has the luxury of that, maybe of time. You know, when you're starting up brand new business, most people are pretty much risking it all in order to get something out. And you might not then have the luxury or affordance to, well, let's already have optimization in mind right from the jump, because that requires time that you might not have, money as well, resources you might not have, skill set too. But yeah, so we go back then years and years and years. There has to have been, and there was some consideration to optimization. As to what extent though, and to what fidelity? That is a good question. So yeah, there was quite a lot of technical debt, even on release on PC. And then over time, we had carved out a specific amount of time to deal with that. So immediately after PC release, there's a heavy amount of investment in dealing with such a crude amount of technical debt. And then not just because we wanted to get patches, but also we wanted to continue working on and more content. So it needed us to turn our attention there. And that's also affected the schedule that we wanted to then produce and share content. So one should expect that we actually have a stronger game with each release because we are spending a serious amount of time with each update that's on dealing with bugs and further optimizing the game.
Yeah, so it's something constantly evolving, right? PC and then console, and then just continuing to sort of add content. I mean, on that, I know you guys are about to release a new DLC. Do you want to sort of paint the picture of how that's come about, what's led to this, and what that DLC is essentially going to encompass?
Generally, our high-level sort of story that we're looking for here of this release is we want to tie 3 levels together in a single package. So like how you can play through one mission that connects you neatly to a second mission and then to a third, that's unusual to Ready or Not. We haven't done that before. We'd have had maybe an overarching story that maybe connects a few dots. This is quite different. You play 1, 2, and 3, and it should be in sequence, and you get that kind of movie structure, beginning, a middle, and an end. So that's quite unusual for us. I think that is not just exciting, it's different. And I believe, we believe that players will have some interesting moments by the end of it, maybe different reactions, different outcomes. So the story, however, takes place still inside of the same setting. We still take our players to Los Sueños. And in this case, we're just looking at a new faction, our MLO faction. So the Mariposa Lily organization, these guys we described as your SWAT equivalent. So if you're a SWAT commander, this is, if you are Superman, these are your Bizarro to your Superman. They can do just the same thing that you as a SWAT team can do. They can kick down doors. They can throw their flashbangs, breach rooms. These aren't your professionals. They're more than that. And so this gives our players quite a challenge. So we're throwing down the gauntlet here. Can you overcome these guys? Can you take this 1, 2, 3 story mission beat and get to that final conclusion? Yes or no? Well, we hope to see how players deal with those challenges, all manner of unique ways.
Absolutely. And as far as sort of like what we were trying to achieve as well from this DLC, first of all, we're super excited about this internally. We've been noodling around with these ideas for a very, very long time now. And a lot of what Ready or Not is as a concept has been building up to this. That's why the DLC itself is called Boiling Point. It's like we're at the point now where everything's boiling over. The city is completely in unrest, even more so than what it was in Ready or Not. And it was already a pretty stark place that, it was on the tipping edge of, all it needed was a little catalyst, a little something to send it over the edge. And that is what this DLC is. So everything's been building up to this. It's big and it's exciting, and we wanted to basically make the city also a huge focus of this as well, because obviously we've had many missions spattered around the city in all different locations, in all different areas of the city, in all different everything. But with this one very, very specifically, we wanted to take us to some of the core landmarks of what makes the city really, really special. So we're using this to really up the ante in terms of what's actually happening.
Nice. And so I guess is this sort of the fruition for you guys of all the work that you've kind of put into developing the world and sort of just bringing it, I guess, to the next level in a way. What sort of inspired the 3-part structure and the testing for that type of content? Like you said, you've never done this before, and it's, you know, a new challenge for gamers, I guess. But like, what went into the thought process in terms of why you decided to go that route specifically?
And my perspective, at least, is that, like we mentioned earlier for a question you had, where it might have been myself, Mark, Sterling, who might have made certain decisions about what new level we want to create, and that might be quite location specific. It could be gameplay specific. Now we're at such a point in the team where we have lots of different perspectives beyond those 3 I'd mentioned. Includes art, design, narrative, engineering, where we can all pull together from those different areas and we'll craft something that's much more cohesive. So here we want to make improvements on our narrative delivery. Here we want to make improvements on the amount of interactivity that one can have inside of a single level or a game mode. And all of that means that this is what we're producing here in Boiling Point. You have many more forms of interactivity, be it things you can find in the level that can happen, that you can engage with in different ways that you might not have in previous levels, as well as how narrative is provided to players. So where before it might have been rather, in some cases, limited, but it was delivered via not just recordings, or if it was sort of on overlap triggers, you can hear certain reactions from your squad mates. Now it's more than that, and much more than that. Again, how we can deliver and provide narrative to our player base. And so we think that it's just another step up in those 2 areas, but that's just 2 among many. It's the same with tools as well. We provide yourself with then more tools. So we think more verbs. So then, okay, how can I use as a player those verbs to better engage with not just my enemies and bad guys, sure, but the level. So that's throughout. It comes from that perspective. We want to do some things better, and then in others, we want to provide a little bit more focus on areas we might have otherwise avoided or just not have been happy with on previous releases. So when narrative back then, maybe 6 years ago, might have been restricted to what could be a post-it note on a wall, now can be characters with actual delivery of certain narrative, with voice lines that you can see, animations play out. That's something we want to now be able to do. So without that detracting from players' own agency, while it still tells a story, while still players can engage with missions in largely the same way.
Building upon that as well, I think it's kind of like a fairly common understanding that everyone in Void, no matter what we're doing, very, very much like what I said before earlier in the conversation, we are always trying to improve, and we're always trying to do better than the last thing that we did. And I think Boiling Point is a fantastic example where everything is just bigger. I don't necessarily mean the size of the levels themselves when I say bigger, but the actual content that is being delivered is a much higher focus of craft. It's a much, we put a lot of time and effort to really create what I think is going to be a fantastically exciting experience. Everything's bigger. There's more of everything, and hopefully that is not only going to be really awesome for the player to be involved with and interact with and play these levels, but add that additional challenge of what Sean was talking about as well.
Nice. And then without, I guess, spoiling too much, is there anything that you guys are personally just really excited for players to see or see how it's going to be received?
Yeah, there's immediately one that comes to mind, which we all hope players find themselves. So I would go to then my second best answer. I'm really keen for players to mess around with our new guns and some of the new functionality we have in the guns too. So I love, like you can tell from this conversation, I love other mil sims. I play a lot of those games very regularly. So, not just our new attachments, but how you can then customize your guns much more than we were able to before. I hope that players see that, receive that the way it was intended, which is we want to give you more tools in your arsenal and more ways for you to mess around with the existing tools thus provided. So you can swap out your optics for new optics, but your previously provided optics then have more functionality. You can increase the zoom, you see the hand come up to the optic and start to make that adjustment. I think that's a nice touch, where most games might not have done this. They've just sort of ignored the cost and said, no, we don't need it. It just needs to be on input, and we don't really care at that level of fidelity. We do. That's the genre. That's what we care about. And we think our players really, really enjoy this. So yeah, guns, tools as well. Get the 9-banger here. You get magnifiers. So you get a flip-on magnifier to a particular optic. Existing optics as well, like I said, where if there would have been the magnification, like the attacker, you can now see that adjustment between the different variables or zoom. But yeah, I think that's really cool. That would be my answer. But we'll look to see if players find my first answer. I will not share anymore.
Yeah, I'm also very, very hesitant to say the actual things that I really, really am excited about, because I really don't want spoilers. A huge part of what makes me so happy when I see players play Ready or Not is those moment-to-moment things where they go, oh wow, I didn't expect that, or oh wow, that's so cool, or they're reading something and the pieces start falling into place about how the story is linked and that kind of stuff. So for me, it's just the broad spectrum. Like, I'm super excited to get the players in these new levels, and really, really keen to just see what they think about it more than anything. I'm like I said, we put so much effort into like how these look and how these feel, and every time we've done that, especially with like the previous DLCs, we've always tried to step that up. So I'm hoping that the reaction that we get from these is equally as stepped up that goes with it as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think from the sound of everything, there's a lot that people can look forward to. I'm pretty excited about this as well. So no, it sounds really cool. You guys have really, really sold it very well there. But yeah, I guess just to slowly wrap us up, just looking back at your journeys, I mean, thanks so much for the conversation and everything, and showing the evolution, I guess, of both the game and the company. Is there anything that I guess stands out to you from both the art or design side that you'd say you're like the most proud of in this journey in terms of building the game over time?
It's an excellent question, and I think me and Sean are both a little bit like, there is a lot. Like, I'm so proud of really everything and everyone. The fact that we managed to get it this far is just phenomenal, really, from where we started to where we are now. The only way we could have done this is through sheer hard work and determination, passionate people who bring their A game every day to the table. Fresh ideas, and it's been a struggle, but then at the end of the day, if it was easy, it probably wouldn't be worth doing. I think our love comes through to our product. I know that sounds a little wishy-washy, but it's true. It's just the whole big picture. I'm just super proud that we got here.
I'd say I agree entirely. I'm really proud of our team, and it is a huge team effort. So though in this call and for this recording, it is me and Mark here, but there's so many other people in the team that deserve all of that credit. And to that, I would say something I'm particularly proud of is that from really the point, not just where I joined, but it goes beyond that. It goes prior. There's a level of transparency that we have at Void that we've been able to maintain. And transparency, well, I also will be more specific. Safety, I think, too. So people can bring forward to not just managers, heads of department, anybody here, you can bring forward not just your idea and share with others without sort of immediately being shut down, as I have felt that before at other businesses. But also if there are things that need to change and adapt because there might be some challenges, that we have a team here that I can say with a measure of confidence that feels that safety that they can do so. That's quite something. That's something to really look after as well. Because, as I say, that is not just something that's hard to establish, but to maintain. So trust, transparency, but from that I do mean like safety. So especially as both me and Mark, managers ourselves, director, lead, the team needs to feel that, especially as a team grows. Mm-hmm. It's a very different perspective. Like we said, on a small team, you might already have that. It might be quite quick and easy to achieve. It's looking after that when you grow and how you can still maintain that level of safety. And I mean, guys, anyone in this team, you can share what you need, but this is the way you do it. All right? So that we don't cause confusion, that anybody and everybody can then just say something that comes like that. but still you can share, and that you have a space here, and that we're all professionals, and we all actually work well together, and you look after that and keep it a core part of your culture. That I'm quite proud of. So I think we still maintain that here at the business. So I'd say that bit as well.
Yeah, I have a huge amount of respect for that. I think a lot of times, both in games and in external places, that kind of culture is just very hard to protect, and especially as you grow, like you mentioned, there's very few companies that I've seen that have actually been able to succeed at that, and it sounds like it's still going strong at Void. So, congratulations, you guys, and it sounds like a really cool place to be. I guess just to wrap us out, then, is there anything else you guys want to shout about? Obviously, we've got the DLC coming. Anything else in the future for Void or the game itself, or is that kind of a well-deserved break for now, and we're taking one step at a time?
Just more content. More
Yeah.
content for Ron. That's it. You can expect more support for Ready or Not for years to come. Yeah.
Exactly what
focus on
Sean
this
said.
space.
We are not ones for stopping. We're not ones for taking a break. We're not going to rest on our laurels. Like, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep evolving the game as much as we can. Keep giving back to the players as much as we can. Keep supporting them. And then, yeah, what else? Gosh. We've also got some pretty cool merch. I'm not gonna shout it out too much, but just for the marketing team, we've got some awesome merch. Again, something that when we first started making the game, we never thought we'd get to this position where we actually had like a merch store and stuff like that. But yeah, some
It's
really
crazy.
cool stuff on that. Some really cool stuff on that.
We got one of us with a bomber jacket or something like that. It was like a jacket like this, basically, but it was all very like Ready or Not coded. It's just amazing. I know that would definitely make me sound like I'm sort of fleecing for it. It's just, we're just really happy. Really proud of what those team members are able to do. I'm sure players and our community would be happy if they made the same purchase. So anyway, great shout, Mark. That was very cool.
Awesome. I'll definitely have to look that out. I do like my video game clothing. That's always a fun thing, especially good quality merch. That's one of the main things that I love getting at conferences. So it's a good thing to shout out, I think. But yeah,
awesome.
Mark, Sean, thanks so much for joining me. It's been really fun talking to you and just hearing about your journeys in Void, hearing about the Ready or Not game development process, and just the journey so far. It's been really cool to hear. So thanks.
Absolute
for
pleasure being here. Thank you very much for having us. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for your questions as well. I hope other your listeners find that insightful and valuable.